Why is this the most controversial Tesco in the whole of Scotland?
London on a Sunday. Any other town in Britain might look much the same. Boring, do you think? Or just nice and quiet?
This is the Tesco in Stornoway. I've actually been there, and it's controversial because it's on the Isle of Lewis. And on the Isle of Lewis, there's quite a tradition of maintaining the Sabbath day or the Lord's Day, whatever, Sunday as a day of rest and for worship. And Tesco is now proposing to open its doors to customers on a Sunday, which it hasn't previously done. Now, obviously, the belief in the Western Isles stemmed from the Ten Commandments about the idea of a day of rest. It was only 2002 when the first flights flew in and out of Stornoway, and it was 2009 when the first Sunday ferries went in and out of Stornoway as well. But now the Tesco's wanted to open on a Sunday, and some local residents have started a petition. It's up to 700, according to the BBC a couple of days ago. And now you're probably thinking, if you live somewhere else in Scotland, well, it's just absolutely normal for supermarkets to be open every hour of the day and night through the whole week. But in Stornoway, things are different. Now, the debate they're having there, it's a little bit similar to the debate that was had nationwide across the UK, sort of back in the 50s onwards. And it went a bit like this.
The Lord's Day Observance Society organises opposition to Sunday reform.
How far would you go in defending the present inconsistencies in the law, that you may play snooker on Sunday but not dance?
We would defend no inconsistencies at all, and if the law is to be revised at all, we would say do away with those inconsistencies by doing away with all forms of amusement on Sunday.
Would that include television, for example?
Certainly.
You are encouraging legislation to enforce people to spend what you consider a Christian Sunday. Do you not think that Christianity is a matter for individual choice and not for laws?
I quite agree that the Christian faith is a matter of choice. But Sunday is a divine institution which has been given to men for their well-being. There must therefore be laws to protect Sunday from those who would exploit it for their own commercial gain.
They wanted to make it illegal to play snooker. This is a bit odd, isn't it? I'm not sure those views are representative of Christians, even in those days. But what they finished there, the man ended up by saying that the Sabbath was a divine institution given to men for their well-being. Now, as the Scottish Family Party, as a political party, the divine institution bit, that's not really our department. We're not a church. But the for their well-being bit certainly is. That's what politics is all about. Let's just have a think about the idea of a day of rest and its impact it could have on society. Now, in the whole of the UK, there are laws which are designed to some degree, restrict the amount people work every week. For example, working more than 48 hours is sort of very difficult in the law. So if you're an employer, it's difficult for you to pressurise or expect workers to work more than 48 hours a week. Even a person who wants to voluntarily work for more than that, again, there are sort of legal barriers in the way. They can be surmounted, but there are legal barriers in the way. So the idea that the government can make regulations in order to prevent people from choosing or being expected to overwork is accepted in our society, and I think that is a good thing. But the problem with that, if you just say people can only work 48 hours, then the leisure time that they have, all people are going to have the leisure time at different times. So for a family, for example, it might mean dad has leisure time on a Tuesday, mum has leisure time on a Wednesday and a Friday, and the kids are at school apart from a Saturday and Sunday. So when does the family have leisure time together? Well, not very much at all. But the idea with having a day of rest is that that's common free time, that everybody has this leisure time, this rest time at the same time, so they can enjoy it together. Now, I think if you want to avoid overwork, it's much easier to do that if there's less going on. If you want to avoid work on a common day of rest, on a Sunday, for example, then that's easier to do the less is going on in that day. So if you think about, for example, a bank head office, would anyone argue that actually it would be better if the bank head office operated the same on a Sunday as it did on every other day of the week? Well, I don't think many people would say, no, that's really what it ought to do. Surely we can see there's benefits of all the staff having a day off on the same day. Think about people say fixing the road. Would it be better that those people were home with their families on a Sunday? Or is it better that they get the road fixed at the time when the traffic's not too busy? Well, you could weigh those up. Professional sport. is another one. This was a hot controversy decades ago. Sundays when a lot of people want to go and watch the sport, but it involves a lot of people working that they might not otherwise want to do. So, tricky issues to discuss. But in terms of well-being, well, let's think about it. Think about health for a start, mental health and physical health. Is that going to be enhanced by having a guaranteed day of rest every week? I would suggest that it obviously would be. And in terms of relationships, for example, family relationships, would they be strengthened by every family, not every family, or a lot of families being guaranteed a common day of rest every week that they can spend together? I think that obviously will be a positive measure for families. Now, the Labour government at the moment, the SNP as well, they've been talking about having a 4-day week for workers, a 4-day week. Well, I think the idea of having Sundays a day of rest, that's a bit like saying we're going to have a 6-day week. But the only difference is they're saying that one of those days is going to be a common day of rest for everyone to enjoy together, which I think has got a lot of advantages. Right, what would it do to the economy having a day of rest? Well, just think about one particular case. This is maybe an unusual case, but it will help us to think about it in any case. Think about the car sales business. Now, Vardy car sales, they're a huge business, particularly in Scotland, I think north of England as well. They run the Cars brand, Cars with a Z brand, etc. Now, as I understand it, that's run by a Christian, and they're closed on a Sunday. So you can't go and buy a car there on a Sunday. Now, let's imagine every car dealer in Scotland or across the whole UK, they closed on a Sunday. You could not go and buy a car anywhere on a Sunday. Right, would that result in fewer cars being sold across the whole of Britain? Well, no. I mean, is there anyone who'd think, well, I'll have a car, but oh no, they're closed on a Sunday, maybe I'll just go on the bus for the next 3 years instead? You can then sell just as many cars in 6 days as you would in 7 days. So if you're a car salesman, however many sales you're going to make in the year, you'd make those sales in fewer days if you don't have to work, if the place is closed on a Sunday. So it would make your work more productive, it would make cars cheaper, and it would seem to be a benefit all round for the economy. Now, what would happen in that situation, of course? You'd have 5 car sales rooms in a row, and they might agree we'll all close on a Sunday, but then one of them eventually would think, actually, we're going to open. We're going to steal a march on the others. We're going to get a competitive advantage. We're going to open on a Sunday. And it probably would give them a bit of an advantage. So then another one will think, oh, we'll need to join in as well. But before you know it, they're all joining in. And what was a real benefit has now gone. They're all having to work harder to still sell just the same number of cars. And that's the sort of situation where the law can come in and actually have a positive effect by enforcing what you would hope would be a positive, mutually beneficial culture in the business. So I think having an agreed day of rest, it could even boost the economy in some ways, and it could certainly boost well-being for individuals and in particular for families. Now, of course, we all remember the COVID rules, when the government decided to try and regulate all sorts of details of our private lives and how businesses could operate. I mean, it really ended up in a total mess. So that needs to be a cautionary tale to us as well. When we're thinking about how might a government regulate things, well, we've got to be quite cautious because things can end up very complicated, full of contradictions and just a total mess. But I would say personally, looking at this area, I think there could be a case for more government regulation of what goes on a Sunday. I'm not saying any sort of blanket bans or anything. A mutually beneficial system could be constructed that would be positive for society in general. Now, in Britain years and years ago, and maybe in the Western Isles up to this day, there's the critical mass of Christians who are maintaining the tradition that they don't want to work on a Sunday, they don't want to do things that make other people work on a Sunday, and they don't want to do things that involve other people working on a Sunday. They want to maintain it as a day of rest. So where that tradition's strong, then its benefits can be very powerful, and that's the case to a limited degree now, but still to some degree in the Western Isles. Across the rest of Britain, generally speaking, that is long gone. But I would say in the Western Isles, where the local culture can still sustain that positive tradition, then great. And if local opinion is supportive of that, then fantastic. So I hope this campaign succeeds. I hope the campaign succeeds. They got lots of signatures, that the council picks up the issue as well. Then I hope Tesco says, okay, this is a different place here in Stornoway. This is not like other places. Let's be sensitive to local opinion. and let's not open on a Sunday. I hope that will happen, but time will tell. Now, of course, other people looking in, they'll say, oh, these backward islanders, they really need to get into the 21st century. But I would encourage anyone saying that just to have a look at any like happiness surveys or anxiety level surveys across Scotland and see where comes out best. And you'll normally find that Western Isles is very, very high up, if not the highest, in terms of happiness or low anxiety, etc. So whatever they've got there, there's something valuable in it. And if they think they're saying this is part of the ingredients for that, then I think we should listen to that. Right, just a personal aside. What's my take to Sundays? How do I spend Sundays? Well, this is partly the result of my understanding of Christian teaching. It's partly experience as well. But I avoid work on a Sunday in general, where I can. I try to avoid work. Would I go shopping? I would try and avoid it as well. I mean, supermarkets, I think supermarkets are amazing. The variety of things in them is so easy to get around and things are so cheap. Supermarkets are brilliant, but they're not a source of spiritual nourishment, let's put it that way. So that's something I want to just give a miss for a Sunday. Sport, professional sport, watching sport, that's something I will do on a Sunday, live or on television. I try not to have that interfering with going to church very often at all, but I will watch sport on a Sunday. I mean, even things around the house, like mowing the lawn, I'll tend not to do that on a Sunday, just because it's a day of rest. And I would recommend to anyone, for no other reason necessarily than I think it will be a positive move in your own life, I would suggest you consider doing the same. Make Sunday a day of rest. It then means you can put your feet up and you don't have to be thinking, oh, I really ought to be doing such and such a thing. Oh, the hedge could really need cutting. Does that work I should be doing for the family party? Because it's Sunday. So you've got an excuse, if you like, to not do all the things that are pressing, that are on your to-do list. You can have a day off. You can get to those on Monday. Now, the whole Sunday trading, Sunday regulations story in Britain, the people who opposed the Keep Sunday Special type thinking, they came from three different directions. There's one line of reasoning was that I want to do what I like on a Sunday. And to be honest, I've generally got a lot of time for that sort of reasoning. I think people should be free to do what they want to do when they want to do it, to a large extent. Others were saying we want to make money on a Sunday. We want to be open to make money. Again, generally speaking, if a business can make money, that's good for the economy. That's generally good for everyone. In general, I think there could be an exception here. But the other driver, which I think was very substantial in previous decades, and that was people who thought having Sunday special, that's like a Christian thing. That's from the Ten Commandments. So that's a bit religious. And we're secularists, so we want that kicking out as a matter of principle. And that's what Stalin did. That's what Napoleon did. They even said, right, 7-day week. We don't want a 7-day week. That's from the Bible. We want a 10-day week or an 8-day week or whatever. And they kept messing around with it. It didn't go well at all. But their reasoning was, it wasn't that a 10-day week's better. It's that let's do anything apart from what the Christians seem to be wanting. And I think in previous decades, that was the most powerful voice. So it wasn't to improve society, give the Christians a poke in the eye. That was more of the motivation through a lot of this debate, I feel. So what will happen in Stornoway? If I had to take a guess, I think the Tesco will open on Sundays. And then maybe at some point after them, maybe one of the people who signed this petition, maybe they'll just nip in one day, one Sunday, to get a pint of milk because they've run out and they've got some visitors coming. Does that make that person a total hypocrite? I'd say not really. Not really. That person could still know that the convenience of being able to nip into Tesco to buy something is less important, is outweighed by the damage that's been done to a positive tradition that's benefited the people of the island for centuries. Now, I'm reminded here of G.K. Chesterton's famous line, which I'm sure you'll have heard before, and that is, don't take a fence down until you know why it was put up. Don't take a fence down until you know what it was put up for. So in other words, this fence is to protect you from what? What is it there to keep out? What is it there to keep in? If you don't know that, it's probably not a good idea to go pulling it up, because you may well learn the hard way. I think when it comes to maintaining Sunday as a day of rest, does Tesco understand the idea of that, the philosophy behind it, the potential benefits of it. I suspect that they haven't got a clue. But let's hope that they learn from the campaign going on now, and we wish them well in their campaign. Right, thanks for watching, and get your conference tickets below. See you on the 9th of November, and see you next time. Goodbye.